everyone, and welcome to my kitchen. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. Happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers. I hope that you've been celebrated well. Yeah. All right. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare a sweet potato pie. All right. This is a quick and simple recipe that you can follow. Not too tedious and doesn't require a lot of ingredients. So the first thing that you want to do is, for every sweet potato pie that you bake, you need 1 pound of sweet potatoes. Now, if you don't know your metric conversions, the grocery stores do have a scale which you can weigh your potatoes as you purchase them. Some potatoes will weigh a little less than a pound. One potato may weigh a pound depending on the size. Some will be a little over a pound, but that's okay because you can add a little more sugar, just about a teaspoon, tablespoon. You can taste it and adjust your measurements. So when you're buying the potatoes, whether you buy the red sweet potatoes, the white sweet potatoes, or the purple, and of course the purple and the white are my favorite, but a lot of people like the red sweet potato pie. I find them too stringy for me, but to each his own, right? So again, you weigh your sweet potatoes as you purchase them to make sure that you have the correct amount. If you are going to buy a pie crust, you can buy the regular pie crust or you can buy the deep dish. And if you just so happen to have more potatoes, you can use the deep dish pie crust and still make one pie, okay? So once you purchase your potatoes and purchase the pie crust, or if you're like me, I make my own pie crust, but this isn't for me, so I'll be using one that's purchased from the store. As I told you, whenever someone asks me for something, I always get specifications as to the things they like the type of flavors they like, if they want the pie crust from scratch, or do they prefer the one bought out of the store. Making bread. What bread do you want? You want active yeast? You want the dry yeast? Do you want no yeast? You want to use the sour cream? Do you want to use sourdough? You kind of question people to make sure that you're doing the things that meets their expectations. Because a lot of times people ask you to do something or prepare something for them, and they don't give any instructions, and then it's not what they expected when it's delivered. So you just ask a lot of questions. Okay, so that's the story on the pie crust, whether you're making it from scratch or if you are purchasing it from the store. And if you like a pie crust recipe from scratch, just post a comment and I'll share it with you. Again, weigh the potatoes before you leave the store to make sure that you have 1 pound per pie. Okay? And the next thing you want to do is peel the potatoes. Okay? So I always start by cutting off the ends of my potatoes. And I do have a potato peeler somewhere around here. But you just take the knife and you can just scale it down the potato just to remove the skin. Some people do theirs with it on. That's, again, a personal preference. So you want to peel your potatoes and get most of the hull off. And I have people who even want their potatoes baked, and then they want the pie made. So, it's just to each his own. It's a little more work. But however they ask, whatever they request, I aim to please. All right. It doesn't take long to peel them. Sweet potato pie is not a pie that takes a long time to make or prepare. It's something that you can do quick. If you have potatoes that seem like they're going bad, you can always peel them and boil them on top of the stove or bake them, and then you can store them for later use. Especially with the temperatures rising, it's heating up, summer's just around the corner. A lot of times you buy fruits and vegetables and you end up losing 50% of them. So don't forget to store everything. Do preps and then store. And the next thing you want to do is peel, and then you want to slice the potato I usually slice mine in rounds, but to each his own. It's like whatever you would like. I do have a boiler on the stove that's ready, and I usually cut them in rounds, and then I cut the rounds in half. There's no right or wrong way. You can leave the potato as a round, and it's still going to boil, and it's going to boil down soft. Right? So, but before I put them in the pan to boil, I'm going to place them in the stainless steel pan, and then I'm going to rinse them off. And I know I have more than a pound, but I'm going to go ahead and peel all of these, and I'm going to cook them, prepare the pie that I want, and then whatever's left, I'll either make 2 pies, or I'll do like a potato casserole. I'll think it through while I'm preparing it, which I'm going to do. Yeah. Yeah, I really like the purple ones. White is my all-time favorite. It's kind of hard to find them. I'm from Mississippi. We can find them there everywhere. I work over in Alabama, so it's kind of hard to find the white ones here. And of course the red ones. I usually order those online from a company out of Chicago, because it's just so hard. And if you find them around here, they're not really the purple that I'm used to. And then even the ones from Chicago, I've gotten some bad ones. A shipment came molded, and then another shipment molded 2 days after I got it. So you have to be careful. Yep, I just cut the ends off them, cut them in rounds, split them in half. Don't forget to use a cutting board. I do have plenty of cutting boards. Today I'm just going to do it without it. The joy of having a marble top, you can use it as a cutting board. Alright. So I'm going to place you guys on a brief pause while I continue to cut up the potatoes. And once I get them washed, I will pick you back up, and we'll start with our boil and get ready for our prep to bake. I'll be right back. Okay guys, I've peeled the potatoes and I've cut them up. I've washed them. When I wash my potatoes, I wash them about 3 to 4 times. I make sure that the water is clear. I inspect my potatoes and make sure that they don't have any spots, dark spots like black or brown spots on them. And I also do it when I'm cutting them, but you know, you're cutting them, you're concentrated on getting them cut up. But when I wash them, I inspect each of them. I make sure that there are no dark spots, brown or black. I make sure that I've got all of the hull peeled off. Again, I wash them until my water is clear, right? So now I'm going to transfer them to a boiler. Okay? And with the boiler, I have enough water in here. Again, I know my metrics. I'm pretty good with guessing, eyeballing exactly what I need. So I make sure that I have enough water, as you can see, to just cover the top of the potatoes. Okay, not too much. All right. Then I'm going to place a lid on it, but I'm not going to place it completely. I'm going to leave just a little opening on the boiler. And then I'm going to turn the eye on, and I usually put mine on about 4 to 5, depending on which stove you have. That's medium, okay? And I'm going to let the potatoes boil until they get soft, right? So soft is like you take a fork and you stick in it, and the fork goes all the way through. So that's when they're ready. You don't want to keep boiling them until they just fall apart in the water. You want to boil them until they're tender. right? Tender enough to where you take a fork or a toothpick or a kebab stick and you can actually push it all the way through with ease, okay? Now, one thing about the potatoes is that I told you earlier is size. You can get some very large potatoes because, you know, we have no control over Mother Nature and how things grow. All right, so when you get them that have the twists, the bends, cut them in half and then peel them. All right, and then if you get some, and one potato is like a pound, you cut it up in the halves and then cut the halves in the quarters. Okay, you can cut them up smaller. The object is that you want them all to boil and to get tender around about the same time. You don't want to have some that are very huge and chunky in your water, and then the smaller ones boil, they're tender, and then the other ones, when you take them out, it's hard to get them mashed, even if you put them in the blender. And you end up having to either throw it away and start the process over, or some people, you know, God forbid, they'll put theirs back in the water. I don't. I've never had that happen, but I have heard the stories. But just know that when you buy larger potatoes, make sure you chop them into smaller pieces so that they can all boil consistently, all right? Because you want the process to go smooth. Because again, this isn't a long process. The longest part is probably peeling and boiling the potatoes. Everything else mixes well, and then you transfer it to your pie crust, whether you roll it out or if you purchase it, and then you set your oven temperature and you're ready to bake. Now, as far as the homemade pie crust, I usually make mine the day before. If I'm making a pie for myself, I usually prepare my crust a day before, and then I'll have it in the oven right about now, pre-cooking it so that it's crunchy. It's soft but yet crunchy. And I make sure that that dough is completely done. With the store-bought, I'll do the same thing. I'm gonna pop it in the oven, but it'll be a little short, a little later on before I put the potatoes in it, because I have Brussels sprouts in the oven. I've already cooked my Sunday dinner. I actually have boiled corn on the cob. I pulled out my George Foreman and I put steaks on the grill, and I have something coming out of the oven in about 15 minutes. So by the time my potatoes are ready to come off of the stove, I'll be ready to put the pie crust in. So I'm going to put you guys on a brief pause. While the potatoes are boiling, I'll let them cook, and then I'll be right back with you. Okay, everyone, the potatoes are boiling. I'm going to go ahead and pre-prep the pie crust. Of course, this is the Pillsbury pie crust, and it is a deep dish. They're not sponsors of this video. It's just this is the type of pie crust that the person who asked for this pie uses or have used previously, or whenever they request something, this is it. All right. But you know, you can get Pet Ritz. You can make your own. You can use the Great Value brand. You can use whatever pie crust is out there. It's just that, as I said, when I bake for people, I usually ask them what their preferences are. Right. So, of course, this is a 9-inch pie crust, and it is 2 in here, because I'm not sure if I'm going to do one deep dish or one deep dish in a small potato casserole, or if I'll do 2. I think I'm just going to do one deep dish. And then whatever's left over, I'll sprinkle some pecans over it, and then they can use it, and marshmallows, and they can use it as a like a sweet potato casserole, just a little side dish. Okay, so now, on the back of the pie crust, when you buy them, it has instructions, and it tells you how to heat the pie crust, like to preheat it before you actually fill it. Now, it tells you to make 1 or 2 crust-filled pies. You follow the instructions that's at the top. That's if you take the pie crust out, fill it, place it in the oven, right? The one at the bottom is if you're going to make 1 pie and 1 crust, it says bake filled pie, all right? So with this one, it's the same thing. So you have an option. You can fill it, place it in your oven if that's what you prefer, or you can follow your instructions where it tells you to let the pie crust thaw for 10 to 20 minutes. Then you're going to prick the bottom of it and around the sides. You just prick it like with a toothpick or a fork. Then you're going to place it in your oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for roughly between 11 and 15 minutes. That depends on your oven. I know in my oven, it's going to be 11 minutes, right? The newer ovens, shorter time. So it'll be about 11 to 15 minutes until it's like lightly browned, okay? You allow it to cool, And by the time it cools, my potatoes will be ready. I'll have all of my ingredients added in and mixed. And then you're going to fill your pie crust. Then you're ready to place it back in the oven for it to actually bake. Because know that the potatoes are going to be cooked once you get them soft. Here, you're cooking them, okay? So once you add in your milk, sugar, flavor, and your nutmeg, cinnamon, ginger, or whatever, allspice, whatever you use, and if you use eggs, you add your eggs. I don't use eggs, and the person who asked for this, they don't use eggs. So there will be no eggs in this one, but you can add 2 eggs per 1 pound of potatoes if you desire. So once you get everything incorporated together, place it in your oven, allow it to bake, and then once it is ready, you pull it out, allow it to cool 15 to 20 minutes, and it's ready to serve. Okay, you can serve it with a dollop of Cool Whip. You can make a special topping if you want to use like caramel, whatever you say, pecans, or any nut that you would like to mix in with it and sprinkle across the top. You can do a lot of different things with it. You can add cream cheese to it. You know, you can kind of spice it up and make it your own personal. This is just going to be an old-fashioned sweet potato pie. Okay, so I'm going to get ready to place the pie crust in the oven. I already have my oven preset at the temperature. Now I'm not going to do my oven at 400 because I know at 400 it's going to cook really, really fast, and I run the risk of like actually overcooking my pie crust before it's ready to fill. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place it on 350. I'm going to take a fork and I'm going to I've already taken these out and allowed them to heat up, come to room temperature, soften. So you just take your fork and you just prick the sides of the dough. Once it unthaws, you know that it's unthawed because the fork is going to go right through the dough, right? And then you're going to be ready to place it in your oven, right? So I'm going to change my oven temperature to 350, right? And then I'm going to allow the temperature to come down to 350, and then I'm going to be ready to place the pie crust in, and I'll pick you back up when it's time to do so. Okay, bakers and bakerettes, the potatoes are ready, right? So basically what you want to do is boil the potatoes until they are tender. Now, not tender and crunchy, because if you press through it and you hear a crunch, you need to boil them a little bit longer. You want to boil them until when you place your fork or spatula through them that they slice up, right? Very, very easily, very smooth. Okay? So I'm going to add these to my blender. I'm going to remove the water from these. You want to make sure that all the water is drained off of the potatoes, because if you place them in there and the water's not off of your potatoes, when you bake your pies, you're going to end up, once they're done and they cool, some of that water is going to settle out in the bottom of your pie. Right? So make sure that you get a colander or a strainer, or if you just want to use the lid from the pot, whichever you prefer, and you just make sure that you drain all of the water off of your potatoes, right? That is a very important step. Right? Okay? So now that I have drained the water off the potatoes, I will transfer them to my blender. You can just use a colander, it works well. Or if you want to take your spatula or just a mixing spoon and you want to just mash the potatoes up by hand, you can do that as well. Okay, whichever you prefer. I'm going to do mine in the blender. Alright, so now to 1 pound of potatoes, you want to add a half a cup of butter, and you want to allow the butter to come to room temperature. Okay, and I've already allowed this butter to come to room temperature, and I use unsalted butter. Okay, so you'll place your butter in. Now I know that I have a little more than a pound of potatoes in here, so I'm just going to go ahead and use 2 sticks of butter. I'm going to use a cup instead of a half a cup. I know that I have approximately 2.5, if my metric system is right, about 2.5 pounds of potatoes. Because I have some pretty large potatoes. Alrighty. So 1 pound of potatoes, a half a cup of butter. Okay, so that's a half a cup of butter per pound of potato per sweet potato pie. Alright, so now I'm going to blend this, just stir it to make sure that my butter gets incorporated into the potatoes well. I'm not going to mix it yet. I'm just getting everything mixed in together. Alright. The next thing I'm going to add, per 1 pound of butter, 1 pound of potatoes, a half a cup of butter, you want to add 1 cup of white granulated sugar. Alright. So I have 1 cup of sugar, and since I added 2 sticks of butter, I need to add 2 cups of sugar, because remember, I have a little over a pound of potatoes. Now you can do it as you would like, and then you can taste it in the end and see if you need to add more sugar or add more butter. You know, it's a personal preference. I know that I have more potatoes than needed, so I'm going to go ahead and add my 2 cups. All right, and I'm going to just stir this in. Okay. Next, I'm going to add milk. For every 1 pound of potatoes, half a cup of butter, 1 cup of sugar, you add a half a cup of milk. Since I doubled my proportions, I need to add 1 cup of milk. Now, when you do your milk, I'm using organic whole milk. You can use buttermilk, evaporated milk, sweetened condensed milk, goat's milk, cow milk, organic whole milk, regular pasteurized whole milk, half and half, heavy whipping cream, whatever milk that you have on hand, feel free to use it. So I've added my milk, and I'm going to allow it to mix. So that's the sugar and the milk. The next thing I'm going to do is add my spices. To this one, I'm going to add, okay, now with 1 pound of potatoes, it's a half a teaspoon of nutmeg. I had 2, so that means I have to add 2 half teaspoons or just 1 teaspoon, whichever you prefer. For the cinnamon, you have to also add the same, a half a teaspoon or 1 teaspoon since you're doubling it, or if you triple it, that's 3 teaspoons or a teaspoon and a half. Alright, is this lid going to come off for me today? So that's the cinnamon and the nutmeg. You know it's not for me because you know I don't like nutmeg in anything that I'm preparing for myself. That's just not a spice that I like. Alright, I'm going to also add a little ginger to this. And you know, ginger gives you a nice kick. So for the ginger, I'm just going to add, not a lot. I'm not going to even add a half a teaspoon. Okay. About half of a half a teaspoon. Oh, just to add a little kick to it. So now I have my spices. If you have allspice and you would like to add allspice to yours, do so. Next, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon per 1 pound of sweet potatoes. Since I have 2.5 pounds, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract flavor. And of course, you know I use Watkins. Now, I'm going to mix this a little bit. So that's a 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1 pound of potatoes, a 1/2 cup of milk, 1 cup of white granulated sugar. Now, if you like eggs, to each 1 pound of potatoes that you add for the pie preparation, you can incorporate 2 eggs into the mix. I don't add eggs to my pies, and this particular person did not request eggs either. So no eggs in this bake, but just know that you can. Eggs are for consistency purposes. It helps it to hold together. I'm not a big fan, but if you would like to, you do that. Because when you cook in your kitchen, remember, you're cooking to satisfy you and your family. And when I cook to satisfy me and the people who I bake for. Okay? All right. So we got a pretty good mix on it. I'm going to take my wooden spatula and I'm going to just take this off the blender because that part doesn't get blended well and it ends up stringy. So and I'm also going to scrape down the sides of the bowl and also the bottom. Okay? I'm just going to make sure that everything is well incorporated into the mix here. You want the potatoes to blend up. You don't want strings. Of course, I don't have this problem with the white potatoes or the purple ones. I don't care if you do it by hand or a blender with the red ones. You usually end up with like a part that's string. So I'm going to stir it again. Let it mix up really good. And I've already removed the pie from the oven. This is what it looks like when you pre-bake the pie crust so that it's ready. And this is so that when you add your filling to the pie and the pie cooks, because it doesn't take long to bake a sweet potato pie because everything's already done. Your crust doesn't overcook on the top and then undercook where you have your filling. You can also take some aluminum foil and fold it around the top of your pan so that the crust on the outside doesn't overcook or get too brown or too hard. So when you cut it, it kind of falls off. So you can just take a piece of foil and line it around the top, and it'll cook with consistency with the rest of your crust. And I'm place you on a brief pause while this mixes, and when it's time to transfer it to the pie crust, I'll be right back with you. So sweet potato pie is already mixed well. I'm just going to remove everything from my blender here. Place it in the mixing bowl. Alright. And now we're ready to transfer it from the mixing bowl. I'll give it a good stir here. But as you can see, everything is well mixed. The potatoes are blended well. So again, this is a deep dish pie crust. So I'm just going to pour it into the pie crust. And as you see, we have enough to make 2 pies. Or I can make a pie and then I can actually transfer it to a bowl and make a sweet potato casserole. So you want it about 3/4 filled. You don't want to overfill the pie. Um, then you're going to place a piece of aluminum foil You can do this on a baking pan, a baking sheet, or you can just take a piece of aluminum foil and place it on the bottom rack where you're going to place the pie. Or if you have some covers, the oven covers, you can place those on the bottom. And this is just to catch anything. I didn't overfill it, but this is just a precaution step that I take. And don't forget to tear off a piece of foil. And since I'm using the wraps, I'm going to have to tear more than one piece. Okay. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. And then you're going to take it and you're going to fold it around the top of your pie crust. Okay. Because you want the pie crust to bake consistently. You don't want the top to overcook. Now, some people bake their pies on 375, some on 400, some at 425. I'm going to bake this pie at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm going to bake it for 1 hour. And I'm going to check it for firmness, consistency, and to make sure that it is done after 1 hour. And I need one more piece of foil. And again, you're putting the foil across the top of the crust so that it does not overcook. Right? Then you want to place it in the center of your oven on top of a baking sheet or on top of the foil. Or if you line your oven, you just stick it in. Okay? And now, I'm going to close the oven door because it's alarming to let me know that it's open. It's at 350. As you can see, it's at 350. And I'm going to let it cook for 1 hour, as I stated. And then I'm going to take it out and I'm going to check for consistency and make sure that it's done or if it needs to go in for a couple more minutes. All right? So while it's in the oven baking, I'll place you on a pause. And I'll be right back with you as soon as it's ready to be removed from the oven. Hi guys, I've checked the pie and it's coming along well. I also reached out to the person and told them I had some potatoes left, and I asked if they would prefer a second potato pie or would they like for me to do a casserole, and they said they'll take a second pie. So I pre-treated that second pie crust deep dish and for about 11 minutes, and I added the remaining potatoes to it, so I have 2 pies in the oven that will be coming out. Okay, so with the sweet potato pie, if you don't want to use the white granulated sugar, you can also use brown sugar, or you can use like a 1/3 cup of brown sugar, and then you can add to it about 1/4 of a cup to a 1/2 cup of the granulated white sugar if you have more than a pound or 2 pounds of potatoes. 1 pound of potatoes is enough for a regular size pie crust. If you have a deep dish pie crust, you're gonna need about 2 pounds of potato per crust. So I actually had enough to actually do 2 deep dish, which was great. Also, if you want to use just the brown sugar in just a regular pie crust, you'll do 1/3 of brown sugar and about 1/4 of a cup of the white granulated sugar. And then when it comes to the evaporated milk, you can use like evaporated milk, sweetened condensed milk. Those milks, like the Carnation or the Eagle brands, you can use about 1/3 cup of that milk because it is a little bit sweeter than whole milk. But then you can also taste it and see if you need to add a little more. And if it's not loose and like kind of soupy, then you know that you need to add a little bit more milk to it, right? So with the brown sugar, can be light brown sugar or it can be the dark brown sugar, whichever you prefer, because remember you're baking this to suit your taste. You can just strictly use the white granulated sugar, or you can do what I do. I use the cane sugar, which is the brown sugar. It's not like the light brown or the dark brown. It is called, we call it just cane sugar. I use that for baking for me personally. Again, with the milks, you can like use different types of milks, but with the whole milk, buttermilk, whether it's 1%, 2% whole milk, skim milk, or if you're using 1.5% on the buttermilk, for those you use a half a cup per 1 pound of potatoes. Okay, so when you're doing the milks and doing the substitutions, you need to make sure that you pay attention and you know what you're working with, because as you know, those evaporated milks, and especially the sweetened condensed milks, they're much thicker. And they're a lot sweeter, so you're going to be also adding sugar to it. So that means you want to cut back on the white granulated sugar and also or brown sugar, depending on which you're going to use. Right? So it's okay to substitute, but be mindful that when you're substituting and what you're substituting, what is it contributing to the consistency of whatever you're cooking or baking. Is it adding more sugar? Is it, because of the sweet base that it has? Is it going to be sweet and sour, or is it going to be salty? If it's not enough sugar, those are things that you bear in mind whenever you're substituting on a recipe. Okay, so just don't want to just tell you that you can substitute things. Make sure that yes, you can substitute, but there are parameters that you need to keep in mind when you're substituting. And number one is, what are you adding to? What are you taking away from? Because everything that you incorporate in a cook, a bake, or a prep all works together or gels together or is incorporated together to have the end product, and that's the end product that's edible, not an end product that's too sweet, too salty, it didn't cook, it's overcooked, it's tough, it's leathery. Those are the things you don't want. You want that end product to be edible, and you want it to be delectable. And as I always say with my bakes, you want it to be an epic bake. Okay, if it's an epic bake, it's an edible bake. All right, so the pies are cooking, they're baking in the oven. I did check them. They're molding perfectly. So I will put you on a pause, and when it's time to remove them from the oven, I'll pick you back up and I'll show you the final product, okay, of my epic edible bake. Alright guys, I've removed the pie from the oven, the first one, and this is the result. Sweet potato pie. The second one is still in the oven, it is not quite done, but I will be removing it within the next 10 to 15 minutes. Alright guys, I have removed the pie from the oven. As you can see, it is an epic bake, and it looks so good. Of course it's hot and I can't cut it right at the moment, but it is what we call an epic edible bake. Alright, so this concludes our bake on the sweet potato pie. Thank you so much for joining me. If you are a subscriber, thanks for subscribing. If this was your first time stopping by my channel, please subscribe, and I do appreciate you visiting us. If there's a recipe that you would like to bake, please place it in the comments below, or you can email Cassie's Kitchen Creations at gmail.com, and I will definitely bake it for you. As far as the recipes, I can post them in the comments. I can post it on the community page, whichever you would prefer. It's just that some of them are long, but some of them I don't share because they are my personal recipes. I can give you just a basic or a classic recipe that I know does work, but a lot of the things that I don't post a recipe for is simply because I have tweaked it, modified it in some way, and made it my own, and I don't share those. But thanks again for joining me. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share, and I will see you guys on the next bake, the next cook, or possibly the next prep. Thanks again. Have a wonderful week.